Duke football is bowl eligible. Back-to-back years, the Duke Blue Devils going bowling. And even more important than that, they have an identity. And it's not the one you'd think. Let's call a spade a spade. If you get outside the triangle, heck, in some places in the triangle. Duke is, like, if we just grabbed a random person from Connecticut, Georgia, Nevada, just pick your place in the country, said Duke, they're probably thinking smart, elitist, private, basketball school. Well, what about hard-nosed, physical, no-nonsense football team? How about it? Mike Elko has done the impossible and actually made that the identity of Duke football.
Without having to clean the house.
With in some cases, obviously there are some new players, but a lot of cases, the players that were already there. Riley Leonard was already on campus. Here's Mike Elko on becoming bowl eligible for the second straight year, which also happens to be just his second year leading the Duke Blue Devils. Here's Elko after the game.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think I've been thinking about this one the whole way up the stairs. Like, just grit. I think the only way we get that thing done is just grit. It's a togetherness. It's a stick-to-itiveness that we just kept playing, just kept trying to find ways, tried to find ways to unlock the offense and try to get our young quarterback in a rhythm. And then he gets a little bit settled in at the end and makes some big-time throws that we needed. And fortunately, we get a couple penalties on that last drive, and we get it down, and then Todd Polino goes out there and drills it. And so just so proud of the fight of these guys. That's the biggest takeaway for me.
So proud of the fight. Do you realize how difficult it is? And I'm not talking about just turning the program around, although that does make Mike Elko very attractive to schools that may need a turnaround. They've now beaten legitimate teams, Power 5 teams, with 3 different quarterbacks. They are the only team in Power 5 football to win games this year with 3 different quarterbacks. Duke has now beaten 2 in-state ACC opponents, completing 4 and 7 passes in those 2 games. 4 passes in a game they won in the ACC, and then they did it again with a different quarterback completing 7 passes in an ACC game to win it a couple weeks later. That is a team and a program that gets it. Grayson Loftis, their freshman quarterback that stepped in to play and start last night, he was in over his head. That's no disrespect. He wasn't expecting to play. Right? He was a player that came in at best 3rd on the depth chart with a guy who at times this year was seen as a first-round draft pick ahead of him. He was in over his head last night. Here's Mike Elko on what it takes to get a true freshman quarterback ready for his first start on a short week.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly wasn't ideal. You don't really dial it up that way. Credit to him. I mean, he's been involved all year. He's been taking his reps serious. He's been preparing like this time was going to ultimately come. And, we knew early when Henry went down there was a chance this was going to have to happen. And, and it is. It's just a credit to Grayson and how hard he worked. And certainly going to be a lot of things for him to clean up, but went out there and managed the game the way we needed to and made some big-time throws in the fourth quarter.
The win glosses over a lot for Grayson. 7 of 19, 86 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and a lost fumble. And you're right, he did make a couple big throws in the fourth quarter, give him credit for it, but up until then, there weren't many bright spots.
Only targeting wide receiver Jalen Calhoun 1 time throughout the entire game. That's pretty impressive in itself.
There were some dropsies going on out there, too, so it's not all on Grayson. But that passing game, it was very obvious early on they weren't going to be able to storm back from a large deficit. They weren't going to be able to win anything that even resembled a shootout. They weren't going to be in position where it could be an offense game. So the defense said, cool, I got it. Listen, we'll figure it out. You do your best, Grayson. We'll figure it out. That is so comforting for a coach to hear. You want to know what the fourth quarter defense for Duke looked like? These are the drives Wake Forest had in the fourth quarter. Fumble recovery, punt, interception. as they were making winning plays, as they needed to, at times, get points to win the game, the defense said, we'll give you as many chances as you need.
And give Wake Forest credit. I mean, they were putting together sustainable drives all game. It just, for some reason, it felt like the fifth or sixth play of every drive, it'd be a quarterback keeper, and that's when disaster would happen for Mitch Griffiths.
I mean, at one point in time, I was looking at it. Mitch wasn't playing great, but he was completing a high percentage, and I was just sitting there thinking, I think experience at quarterback is so drastic when it's this lopsided, right? With a guy like Grayson, who probably up until a couple weeks ago wasn't even taking serious reps in practice, let alone in games, and then Mitch had been the starter, and he'd lived a life this year a little bit, kind of to the bench with an injury, back up, watched it, learned from it. I was like, it's just experience is too big. And then it flipped in the fourth. This is what I'm talking about when I say Mike Elko has changed the entire program for Duke. The offense was not going in a good direction, and nobody panicked. For years, when Duke football got down in the fourth, okay, yeah, no, we were close. We had fun. All right, this wasn't as bad as some of the other losses. Instead, it was no. We'll get you the ball back. Be ready. We'll get you the ball back. Be ready. Hey, it only takes one. Hey, find that one, nice post throw you have in your entire bag of tricks today, Grayson. You're going to throw for 86 yards, but 30 of them are going to be on one pass for a touchdown. That's what we need, and that's all we need.
Coach Elko also talked about it in the postgame. He said this should answer the question of, can we bounce back from losses?
Yeah, no one should ever question their fight.
Yeah, no one should ever question their fight. And it's true. I mean, a disastrous fourth quarter against Florida State and a even more disastrous game against Louisville, and you throw in the equation they store a true freshman quarterback. I was at the game last night, and I had to break the news to a couple of Duke fans like, hey, not only Riley Leonard's not started, but Henry Beeland's not starting either.
And no, did anyone expect – who questioned their fight? We questioned their production when they got smacked around in a shutout game by a team that I don't think has a defense that is worthy of many shutouts. We questioned the production. We can question the fight. We questioned what they could do without Riley Leonard and or without Riley Leonard being 100% is a better way to put that. We questioned a lot. I don't know if we questioned their fight. Old Duke teams would have questioned their fight, but since Mike Elko has shown up, I haven't had any reasons to question their fight. Bowl eligibility for Duke is still an accomplishment. Right? Let's remember where this program was 4 or 5 years ago. Having a 9-win season last year doesn't mean it's like, all right, now we're above it. We're never going to be happy about anything again. You celebrate this. Is this the end of their goals? No. Did their goals get way out ahead of themselves earlier this year? Probably. But bowl eligibility in back-to-back years is an accomplishment. Heck, I covered at a previous stop Virginia Tech when they had 27 consecutive bowl appearances, and I was there when that streak snapped. And I can tell you right now, I was still rooting for them to make a bowl. Bowl eligibility is some measure of success. Consistency. It raises your floor. If you're making a bowl game every year, you're doing something right. That's not to say you're doing everything right. That's not to say there's no room for improvement. It's not to say your ceiling is being met. Give them credit. 3 different they have 6 wins. 3 different quarterbacks got those wins. 2 of them came with a total, complete, combined 2 wins, 11 completions. That's a team picking up the players that need to be picked up.
And it's funny you say your ceiling's not being met. It is being met in some way, but that was my next question to you. Is this Duke's ceiling?
No.
Now back-to-back seasons of bowl eligibility.
Gosh, no, not at all. I think their schedule was tough this year. I think if Riley Leonard doesn't get hurt, I was just on the Adam Gold show, which airs before this one, earlier this hour, and he focused on 4th and 16 against Notre Dame. 4th and 16, Sam Hartman scrambles, he picks it up. That play right there, you change just that play, and I know you can't do this. It's like the Back to the Future thing, right?
Yeah.
You go back and change this play. Suddenly, kids aren't being born and
hop in the DeLorean.
Yeah, exactly. But if you go back and just have that 4th and 16 be a 13-yard scramble by Sam Hartman and he gets tackled, one player stays home a little bit more, catches him from behind. Who's to say that Duke's not undefeated at the moment? Right? Because Florida State State, they were leading when Riley Leonard had to leave the game. Now imagine if Riley Leonard was healthy that entire game, because if they tackle Sam Hartman on that 4th and 16, guess who doesn't get hurt on the ensuing drive? Riley Leonard, right? They're just taking knees. They're just handing it off and wasting the clock. It's a sliding doors moment. Duke, if things break their way, can have a completely different season. They are not at their ceiling. But back-to-back bowl eligibility? Congratulations. Like, go back. Like, it's what do they call it? The veil of ignorance. The veil of ignorance is like you should write laws as if you could go back to before you were born, and you didn't know if you were going to be smart, if you were going to be successful. You didn't know if you were going to be tall, short. You didn't know if you were going to be born in this part of the country, that part of the country, this state, that state. Just assume like that's how you should think of it. How about that? Go back to 2 years ago when you haven't hired Mike Elko yet. If you say, you know what, over the next 2 years, you're going to have at minimum 15 wins and be bowl eligible twice. At minimum. Room for more. Still more games to play. At minimum, 15 wins over the next 2 years and bowl eligibility both years. Every single person signs up for that. That's why you celebrate.